to come and speak on push and pull factors to shaping up payments and transfers in Pakistan. Nadeem Saab, please.
I'm just trying to get everyone's attention. There you go. Thank you. Trying to get them away from their mobile phones. So I have about 20 minutes to just kind of give some views on where we are going next, and it's been a really good discussion. Irfan Saab set the stage very nicely, and he said something about speaking from the heart. So I'm going to try and do this, speak from the heart a little bit, because I think it's also a little bit about where the opportunity is, where we're trying to go, right? So for those who don't know me, I'm Nadeem Shaikh. I head VEON, which is one of the shareholders of Jazz. So I head Jazz's digital finance services business globally. My background is I ran billion-dollar companies around payments. I was one of the first pioneers to really think about fintech in 2010 in London. We created a fund. And when we created a fund in fintech in 2010, people thought we were crazy. They thought it was like, why we would give up a lucrative job to come and do fintech. And it's only in 2014 that the UK government came up with a fintech strategy, right? So this whole revolution is 4 or 5 years old. It's not like we've been doing this forever, right? So this is what we are trying to, this is the mission statement actually from my team, right? This is my mission statement. When I wake up in the morning and saying, what are we trying to do in Pakistan? This is what I wake up to. And saying, give every Pakistani access to wealth, health, and happiness. That's my definition, our definition of financial wellness. Right? It's not enough, as Irfan Saab said, it's not enough to just give people a bank account and say thank you so much. We have to really think about how do we help them create wealth from it? How do we get them out of their poverty? How do we get them out of day-to-day misery and so on, and can really alleviate that stuff? And then it's also about health. A lot of the connection, both the mental health, physical health is all connected to that. And then I want to be happy. Right? My life on the planet is limited. I want to be happy. So how do we engage with the broader life? What is access to travel, access to be able to good food, access to painting, access to do yoga, whatever that is as part and parcel of my lifestyle, right? And this has to be something that's easy. We have gotten. I've been saying this a lot in all conversations. Mobile is not digital. Right? Mobile is an enabler, it's not digital. If you take the same old stuff and put it on mobile, it doesn't make it a digital product. We have to rethink this. And so when we think about giving complicated products that are already complicated to a set of folks on a mobile, it doesn't work. And we say, it has to be easy to understand. And easy to understand doesn't mean that just because I don't speak English, it's like I'm somehow not educated, right? And so, when we kind of use words like, I see it both in and this is a criticism of our own technology and applications as well as the industry. When I say something like CNIC, that's a term only few people in this room understand, right? The average person does not know what a CNIC is. Identity card, Shanakhti card, those things people understand, but we start using CNIC, or we start using QR code, or we start using quick pay, those kind of conversations, people really don't understand this stuff, right? It's also, something has to be accessible. It's not something, we are focused on making this sexy. App is sexy. Most people are on, you asked me about 5G in your conversation. 5G is so far away from what we need to have. Most of our consumers are running on 2G. Most of Africa, all the stuff we talked about in M-Pesa and Kenya, MTN Money and stuff, they are running on USSD platforms. They haven't even created an app yet. They have 15 countries running on their systems, and they're not creating an app. So we are stuck in this thing somehow. We have to take the same old stuff, make it look into an app, and that will somehow solve for all the magical issues that everyone has, right? And it's like so simple. Everyone has in 2G. They can use 2G. They know how to use a USSD menu, which is the technical menu available, text messaging. They can use that. How to make that accessible to everyone. How to make sure that the dukaan wala can also accept that on the same system before we get to the complications of POS machines and QR codes and so on. So we need to think about that, right? So I'll just kind of try and frame this a little bit in terms of what it means. I think there's a little bit of a trust. What does the trust mean from a consumer point of view, from a merchant point of view? And trust is not something that just happens in an application or a technology. It's a trust in the system. So if I'm putting money into something, I want to be able to be guaranteed that I will have access to the money every day in the same consistent manner. So when we come out with policies and so on, which changes that arbitrarily, seems arbitrarily, right? It impacts my trust in the system. So I don't think security is not about just I have to use my PIN code to be secure. I have to feel secure. And unless we transform that security at the moment is sitting in under my pillow. That's where putting money is secure. I know as long as I can access a pillow and somehow have security on my home, I know the money will be still the same. If I put it into something called a bank account and that changes because someone's now asking me for service charges, or someone's asking me for tax, or someone can making me pay, or or making it inconvenient for me to access that, I'm not going to do it, right? So we have to think about this holistically. It's just not a technology issue as such, right? This is the landscape of Pakistan, right? And we have talked about a lot of the stuff that's happened, a lot of good stuff that's happened over the last little while in how we have really transformed the, our regulatory framework, right? Lots of policies come out, lots of players have come in, lots of digital account, branches, banking stuff. There's really impact. But this is the reality of where we are, right? This reality is this. Right, reality is, this is not talking about America, this is not talking about China, this is talking about India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, some of the African markets. You can get into even markets in Asia. Look at what has happened over the last few years and look at where we are, right? And I hear this all the time, oh, because we have a corrupt government, or because people are illiterate, or people don't have access to smartphones, or people don't know how to use, they're not really enabled on digital, they don't really understand digital. These are all the stuff I hear about in our conversations here. Same applies to all these other countries, right? If you want to use some excuses, they all apply to these countries. It's not like India's government is any less corrupt or anything like that, right? I'm not saying the Pakistani government is corrupt. Not saying. This is stuff that we kind of hide behind because we are making our products and services so complex that people are not taking them up on board. And we have to talk about that a little bit, right? This is, this is everywhere. The number of rural accounts have gone up, right? But when I talk to my team and say, when was the last time someone went to a village? None of them have been to a village. And so we have sent them across. And then we talk about a village as if every village is the same, right? What happens in Rahim Yar Khan versus what happens in Mandi Bahawalpur is completely different. The kind of culture they have, the kind of food, in Rahim Yar Khan you can have goats, and Mandi Bahawalpur you don't have goats, right? You don't have the land to do this stuff. The kind of agriculture they use, the kind of crops they grow are different, needs are different. So you cannot just try to solve for this as every village person has the same need as across the board. It is not true. It's just like every person in Karachi doesn't have the same needs as a person in Lahore. It's a different kind of consumer. So we have to understand this better, right, to be able to get to that. But this is also the harsh reality, right? We talk about all the progress on the policy making, a lot of good work going on, but this is a harsh reality. We have to acknowledge that there is a complexity in our regulatory frameworks across the board, where we talk about the State Bank, we talk about SCP, we talk about PTA, we talk about other, we talk about FBR, we talk about NADRA. These are all organizations that are sometimes working at cross purposes, right? So we need to figure out how to make that alignment that we talked about in the panel. That's really, really important, right? Because this is getting in the way from what our competition is able to do, right? Our competition being the global, nations out there, they're our competition. That's our benchmark, right? This is where we are in our business, right? This is a huge opportunity. People use cash. And so, but in order for us to digitize that, we also have to provide the right services for people to manage the cash, right? So if you go into a दुकानदार sort of बैठा हुआ जो अपनी छोटी सी उसने खोली हुई है, how do you help him in terms of when he has cash? He opens a shop at 12. He has cash liquidity requirements. That cash now he can only use that as working capital by putting that back into the bank account and making sure that cash is available to him again. Now at 3, 4 o'clock when his business is really going, you are asking him to take that cash, go and stand in some line of a bank for 2 hours to deposit the cash because the bank branch will close by 5. And now his business goes from that time all the way to midnight. And from all this time now he has no availability, nothing to do with his cash to be able to do anything with that business. So he's limited what he can do because there is no services available. And there's also asking him to go to a bank to deposit the money for 2 hours. When he's running this small shop, that 2 hours is his entire business profit gone. Yeah? And so we designed these very elegant solutions, which is also true of us as Jazz, which is kind of saying, we will have this beautiful solution. You can go to any branch and deposit money anytime you like, but we will wait for 2 hours. We have to solve for that differently. We have to figure out how to get that money out of this system, to be able to take it in a timely manner, to make it in a very effective manner, to put it back into the banking system so he can get access to that in a digital way. And that access has to be 24/7. It cannot be between the banking hours of 9 to 5 with a lunch break in the middle for an hour and on Eid holidays we're shut. Yeah? The market doesn't operate that way. And this is not a criticism of the banking industry, this is a criticism of all of us as industry players, right? So if you're going to solve for this thing, it cannot be solved by just putting a nice digital app and saying this app looks very sexy and so you please use it. It has to be solved by fundamentally understanding the needs of the customer. And the customer here is a huge opportunity. Everywhere I go, I've been to every single market, walked around and stuff, gone to gowns and so on. There is a huge demand, right? This is not a case of which we talk about people don't want this. People are dying for this. They're dying for a service. Whether it's a consumer, whether it's a merchant, whether SME, they don't need sophisticated solutions. They need simple solutions. And how do we provide them in a way which makes sense, right? And there's a huge demand. The failure is ours. As practitioners in this industry, as a holistic ecosystem of stuff, that's our failure that we have not really provided something for them to be able to use, right? And that's the challenge in front of us, that's the opportunity. This is same, this is like, we talk about retail stuff, 1.5 million, stores and so on, what you call corner stores or biscuit category stores. It's a huge demand, right? It's like but we have to solve for it, and we're trying to solve for it holistically. What is the solution for the suppliers, the distributors, as they're coming in? Because someone comes on a motorbike, right? Comes all the way or to some gaon, goes to a shop on a motorbike, understands what their order is, and goes all the way back. Then he comes, laden with his goods, and then everyone knows that this guy is coming with his goods, and they're all waiting for him to now go back with all the cash in his hand so they can get the cash access, right? So think about that. Happens every day in every village, every town in Pakistan is happening. So how do we solve for that side is a very important piece of it. And there's a lot of conversations that we as Jazz and so on are having on that concept. Then there's the concept of saying, if I'm the dukandar, how do I solve for it that I can accept money, right? Now if you give me sophisticated POS machines and start talking to me about interchange and fees and 2% and 3%, and I'm going, wait, I have 100 rupees of cash. I'm not a very profitable business. It's a low margin business for me. I have 100 rupees of cash. Somehow magically I'm going to give it to you because you think it's a better service. You can take like 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 rupees out of it, and somehow that's a benefit to me, right? It doesn't work for that person, right? But there's a need there. We have to solve for the need. So the consumer that at the moment, there's a lot of business we do around domestic remittance, right? Where the money is being sent to all these shops, all these consumers everywhere. Now the consumer gets his money sitting in a gown, right? That's where most of our bulk of our customers are sitting there. That's where the recipient of that cash is sitting. Now somehow the recipient has to go find some agent somewhere or a branch somewhere or ATM somewhere, which is usually about 15 miles away, right? Go spend that time, which is time taken away from their daily activity. Go get this cash with their lost money. So from 1,000 rupees, they've lost now 100 rupees, or whatever the numbers are, right? And I'm going to use this cash somehow. We have to enable that chain as well, and that's where the work is going on. That's the name, right? So somehow we have to solve for the supplier stuff. We have to solve for solutions which are easy to use. That's why I came back to the technology. I have to design a system which is for someone that has a feature phone, a 2G phone, no data actually. In some places, when you go outside of the cities and so on, just go outside of, go into Sindh, go into places like that, there is no mobile coverage at all. So we cannot think of solutions of 4G and 5G and so on. We have to think of very simple technology where assume that data is not available. Assume I don't have money to pay for the data. What does that solution look like? And that's what we're trying to design, because we have to go back to the basics to be able to get back to the promised frontier, right? This is a little bit of, and these are not the key issues, it's just some issues I want to highlight, right? We have a really inconsistent policy right now around what is we consider G2P payments, right? And it's not clear what's the economics around that. And every department kind of goes back and forth. Some people think that everyone should provide this for free because it's somehow a corporate responsibility service, a charity. We should just do it for free for everyone. And the government doesn't have to pay money, we shouldn't charge the consumers and so on, but somehow magically the providers should come up with a solution. It doesn't work that way, right? It's not a charity. If we are going to build a scalable system, we have to figure out the economics. So there was an example of, the digital passport payments were all digitalized. For the last 4 years, payments are happening. Someone comes in and says, oh, I'm not sure if we should charge the consumer, And guess what? We've stopped doing digital payments on passports. So now it's gone back to cash again, right? We talk about Nadara, but from an industry point of view, Nadara is providing a great service, a lot of data, but it's very expensive. Every single transaction we do has to be verified by Nadara. It doesn't matter if we do a PTA transaction or a state bank transaction, everyone is at cost. So it's almost become nowhere in the world is a function like Nadara acting as a profit center, right? No, our competition doesn't have Nadara as a profit center. Nadara has become a profit center. So we need to, I know this is, I think we have to have this conversation with saying, if that's a great service, how do we do it in a way that makes it efficient for the industry provider service, right? This is not a criticism of Nadara. This is a criticism of the process that we have put in place around it, right? I see this all the time. There's a lots of, really well-meaning RFPs that come out from the government, from all kinds of areas, where it's based on understanding of the legacy system. So the RFP says, this is awesome, we want you to digital payments, but the only way you can do digital payments, you have to have branches, you have to have ATMs, you have to have printers installed everywhere, you have to have, and if you don't have this, we'll deduct points against you. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to spend all this money to build the legacy infrastructure because you want me to provide a digital service. It doesn't compute. So somehow we have to get these conversations right. How do we educate people in saying the legacy infrastructure that was there is no longer necessary, right? It doesn't mean it's completely redundant. It is important to have this stuff, but on top of that, we cannot just use that and say the only way a branch or a microfinance inclusion bank can be successful has to have hundreds of branches and 100 ATMs everywhere, right? The model in Kenya is every retailer, and this is someone said this in the break as well, every single retailer is an ATM. Every single person is an ATM, right? There's more people that can do cash in, cash out in Kenya, as an example, and this is the same applies. I can give examples of other countries as well, because Kenya becomes the standard everyone uses. There's more cash in, cash out points in Kenya than all ATMs put together in Europe. Just think about that. There are more places you can do cash in, cash out, which is basically an ATM function, right? Like cash in or cash out, than all the ATMs put in Europe, right? So how is that possible? How do we make that possible? So this is why we cannot rely on the legacy infrastructure, and because that's a very capital-intensive infrastructure. It takes a lot of time to do that, and that's why some of the rollout of some of our infrastructure is slow, right? And there's something here we talk about a little bit. I just want to highlight is because I come from a startup background. It's very, very hard to be a startup in this country. Very, very hard. And it's not because, there are normal issues and so on of just regular businesses and so on. But in terms of, I have a company, it's not my company, I'm just using an example. I have a company, I've registered it in Singapore. I'm making business because Singapore and some places like US are really, really good places to incorporate startup companies, which is a global phenomenon, everyone does it. But if I now need to get money in, so I want to find investors from Pakistan to invest in my company so I can develop business in Pakistan again, God help us all, right? The amount of stuff we have to go through between all kinds of policies, all kinds of things, and there's a genuine stuff around foreign exchange and so on, but it is hard. So the market that moves in weeks, it takes 6, 8, 10 months to get approvals to make a small investment, and every time you have to go through the same process. So somehow, when we talk about economy where we are 4th largest in freelance, right, in the world, there's a real opportunity, but some of the basics gets in the way, and because we think about this in isolation in kind of different areas, it doesn't really work, right? So we think about it and say, that's okay, we have all this freelance, everyone can do stuff because we allowed them to now self-register and so on, but the capital stuff is really hard. So we say, that's okay, but if you want to get capital from outside, you can get capital outside, but if you want to capital locally, so how do you build this ecosystem in a way that's consistent, right? That's really important. This is like, so I'm not going to spend a lot more time on this. It's just the opportunity in front of us is huge, right? And this is really, I think Irfan Sahib said, this is not really a conversation for the State Bank or for FBR or something. I think this is a need for all of us to figure out how we can help enable, right? Financial inclusion is, it's a national priority. Any aspect of it, it's not just because the State Bank said it's a priority or the government said, it is an absolute priority because there's everywhere you look at, the impact on GDP by having more financial inclusion is huge, right? So as every Pakistani citizen and stuff, this is our responsibility as practitioners, as people who can have impact in this thing is really, really important. Tax reforms, of course, is necessary. Of course, we have to be, being able to pay tax. Of course, that makes the whole nation work better. So that makes sense for us. And so how do we do that? There's so much, leakages and corruption and so on. Now it's like some basic things. You digitize some payments. Like, in Islamabad, we do the Islamabad Challan. And it's like a very digitized, suddenly it takes all the corruption out of it. It's a very simple thing. Someone comes in and stops you, you pay the challan on the spot, you can do it from the app or from the wallet or whatever digital account, and you get a receipt, it's done, right? There's no corruption involved at all, it's documented. Suddenly all that stuff where you would randomly stop disappeared. It's a very simple, small use case, but this is an example of what is possible, right? And there's a lot of work around, and that's why I've used this concept of financial wellness. It's not about just having access to money, right? Wellness, if you are not secure from a financial point of view, there's a lot of impact on how you operate in daily life, right? And so that wellness piece is really, really important for us to move forward as a nation. So, this is a huge opportunity, right? And we have a lot of the building blocks similar to everyone else, right? And all the negatives are there, but all the positives are there too. Right? We have very passionate people. There's a lot of youth coming in, lots of people who are really trying different models, coming up with different technologies, different kinds of products and saving, all kinds of fronts. We talk about fractional gold and stuff. There are like companies here who are doing all kinds of even more advanced stuff. But we need to now figure out how to put it together in an easy, accessible, easy to understand, universally distributable process. But for that, we have to go down to the basics, because I think the difference when I travel around, and I've kind of lived in 10 countries and worked all kinds of places and built businesses, people forget about the story of China with Jack Ma. Jack Ma didn't take a model and said, okay, let me go figure out what happened somewhere and then implement it in China. He figured out that actually he started at the biscuit category customers, right? We now talk about all the e-commerce stuff. He started really basic stuff and said, I have a need in my local town and village which is not being solved, so I'm going to solve for it in a very uniquely Chinese way, right? M-Pesa was the same thing. It was a very unique Kenyan way. And so the challenge for us is to figure out the unique Pakistani way, right? Because our needs, our culture, our norms, our processes are different. So we try to import stuff without really randomly thinking about this. Half the stuff that's happening with India is not relevant to what we're doing because of growth. Paytm is a use case, if people use as a case. The guys, Ant Financial has spent $500 million behind it, and it's still not profitable, right? So we think about the money that's gone into Paytm. It's a huge amount of money for it to be really a system that kind of goes, okay, yeah, it works. The numbers, don't be confused by the numbers, because they have 1 billion people, right? So when people say, okay, they have activity of this much, well, yeah, great, that's awesome, but they have 1 billion people to go from, but they spend $500 million doing this stuff. So we haven't spent anything like this on any of our systems anywhere, right? So it's like the opportunity is awesome for us, really, really accessible. The question is how to get back to the basics to build it up in a really different way. Yeah. So thank you. I hope that gives you sense. Thank you.